The women I gravitate to are the ones who defy convention and reinvent themselves. Iman.
I probably wanted to be whatever my most recent heroine in my book wanted to be. So I read a lot. I remember once telling a teacher I wanted to be a lawyer, but I had no idea in the world what lawyers did. But apparently I'd read a book about a lawyer.
You mentioned in the thing that you sent me, Nancy Drew. You're not the first person who actually mentioned Nancy Drew that I've talked to.
Oh, yeah, she was definitely an influence. She did things. She was a doer. Bless her heart.
Maryann Shank is a writer and former teacher who, even though she grew up surrounded by the birth of Silicon Valley, found her deepest inspiration among the women of Somalia, half a world away. She's been celebrating strong and passionate women ever since. I'm Christopher Wurst, and this is
Soft
Power.
Powerful.
Soft
Power.
Powerful stories.
Powerful.
Soft
Powerful. Stories.
I'm a California girl born and raised pretty much in Silicon Valley in the shadow of Apple Computer. They were showing us a world we'd never dreamed of. So we knew that dreams could come true and anything we wanted to do, we could do. It was a wonderful time to grow up. With Silicon Valley bursting up, there was tremendous spotlights on the area. Journalists from around the world came there to find out what was going on. Everyone in the whole region seemed to capture this aura of excitement and energy. Our teachers were wonderful. They had an energy. So we were just energized and dedicated, and we knew we could save the world. You know, I think the biggest hero was the aura of the time. That's very hard to explain to people who were not there. But to feel that energy around you created a world and a destination for you that you just were not looking for. But it was there and it was real. I knew I wanted to see the world. I'm not from a wealthy family, and this was not an option to me. But one day I was at school, it was at San Jose State University, and these recruiters came through and put a notice in our paper that they were looking for Peace Corps volunteers, and if you're interested, come by and take our little language test. I thought, oh, I could go somewhere. So I went and I took the little language test, and lo and behold, I ended up in Somalia. When I got the invitation to go to Somalia, it was only about 2 weeks before I had to leave to go to training. So I ran down to our little local library and I opened Encyclopedia Britannica. You know, there was no internet back then. And I looked up Somalia in Britannica, and there was about a half column on Somalia with one little picture of bush people. That was it. And I found out that, you know, that was about the size of California. They didn't read or write, so I assumed they were, excuse me, please, dumb, illiterate people, which I found out they absolutely were not. And I thought, oh, well, here's where I can really make a difference. I was so naive, just so incredibly naive.
Somalia gained independence in 1960. And there was much optimism after the establishment of a parliamentary democracy. But clan rivalries, weak institutions, and regional tensions undermined stability, led to coups and cycles of authoritarian rule. Recurrent droughts, famine, piracy, and extremist groups have undermined governance, economic stability, and social cohesion there.
They actually wanted to make English the language of the government so that they could function in a modern world. So our job as teachers was to teach. We only taught the very elite of the population, perhaps the top 2 to 3% of the population. And they were going to be the leaders of the country. So we had a very defined role. They also needed schools. So there were construction crews from Peace Corps that went over. They also wanted agriculture. My cohort and I, lived in the little house built by a man called Omar Chicago. That was honestly his name. He had been to the United States on a scholarship. And when he went back to Baidoa and he heard that Peace Corps was coming, he built this little house, about 800 square feet, and he put a water barrel up on top of the roof. So we had running water, and he got us a real potty toilet from the United States. So we didn't have a short drop or a long drop like everybody else. We had a real toilet. He was very kind to us. We were outside of the town of Baidoa, which is probably good. It gave us a bit of privacy. There was the large yard that Omar had with his extended family, and a stone wall that went around the front of it. And if I looked beyond the wall, it was all bush country, thorn bush country. This was a place for camels. Camels could eat those thorn bushes, and with their 4 stomachs, they could digest those thorns and turn them into milk, and thereby save the nomads literally from dying on the desert. Miles and miles and miles of thorn bush. If you knew where you were going, you could get there. If you didn't know, God help you, don't wander into the thorn bushes because you won't make it.
Did camel milk become a staple for you?
It should have. Personally, I had a real hard time with camel milk. Omar was very protective of us. He wanted to make sure that we were okay, and that concern was justified. There was both extreme curiosity about who we were, and there was anti-American sentiment. He even, when there was unrest about, Omar Chicago would put one of his sons at our front door to guard us, literally day and night. He was just like a protective uncle. He was just wonderful.
Tell me about the time that a young Somali woman saved your life.
Oh, yes, Shamsa. Bless her heart. We became friends as well as knowing her through her work. She showed me the marketplace and taught me how to make tea and did some other wonderful things. And one night when I was teaching night school, it had just let out. I'd stepped outside the door and Shamsa stopped me right in front of there. She didn't know a lot of English, but she said, "You follow me." This was the Shamsa I didn't know. She was very serious. She was straight. She's determined. And so I followed her and we started on the way home. Now, on my way home, I said we were on the outskirts of Baidoa. We had to walk through a big field of grass that had a soccer field off to one side. We started through that field of grass, and Shamsa started mumbling things in Somalia. I did not understand what she was saying. My Somali wasn't that good, but she was mumbling things and talking, and at this point getting very angry and stern. And in this field, it was very quiet that night. I saw some of the leaves rustle, like that there was someone out there moving around. She did that all the way across the field. And when we got to the final side, I asked her what she was talking about. And she said, "My knife, my knife." I told them about my knife. I told them my brothers are all along the path outside watching them. And I said, "Them? Who?" She said, "They kill you." And my heart just, pretty much stopped. Omar Chicago, as usual, was home that evening, and he brought out one of his sons who took Shamsa back home, made sure she was safe. He told me that what was going on is that there was a uproar in the village that night, and some of the men had promised to kill an American. I was that American. And I asked him, well, why didn't one of her brothers just escort me home? And he said, Her brothers are in Mogadishu, which is a couple hundred miles away. But she was presenting this whole image of brothers who were not there, of a knife that she probably did not know how to use, just to get me home safe. I was so deeply, deeply indebted to her. Now, how do you say thank you to someone with that kind of courage? Whenever we went to a dinner, we would eat with the men, usually on the floor on these sisal mats that they created and served out of a big bowl in the middle. The men would eat there and we would eat with them. Then the women would go off and with the leftovers later, they would eat. There was one time I tried to eat with the women and the man of the house got so insulted. He thought his hospitality wasn't good enough. And it just caused a ruckus. The women didn't know what to do with me. The host was upset and insulted. So I never tried that again. I just accepted the fact that, okay, they're going to treat me differently. It's for me to adjust to them. A number of us went out to the bush to visit a tiny little village. I had never been to a tiny little village. I'd been in Baidoa my whole time, which was a town of about, 10,000 people. It had a mosque, it had a hotel, it had 30 or 40 shops. It was, a functioning village. It was kind of the centerpiece of that whole region. And it had springs, freshwater springs, and the camel trains came through to use those freshwater springs. So Baidoa had a lot. But going out to a tiny little village that had almost nothing was quite an amazing experience. On our way there, we saw all kinds of wildlife that I'd never seen before. There were birds that sang to us up in the trees. There was a cobra that nearly attacked us. And when we made a stop along the way, we got hustled out very quickly because we found the prints of a lion. We got to this little village, and they served us tea and biscuits, which was really quite a treat. To have something like tea and biscuits in this little village that was nowhere near a trading village was absolutely an honor. The men went off to look at agriculture, which is what we basically came for. And then Maureen, my associate, and I decided we wanted to see the little water hole that we had glimpsed. So the chief's wife took us down to this little water hole. And it looked like there was a section for camels and a section for drinking water. And the section we were in that morning was the section where women did their washing. And we sat down to watch them for a little while. You could feel the rhythm and the music that was there. They didn't sing out loud. They didn't need to. They had done it for so many millennia that the music was there. Somalia is known as the land of poets. It is true. They have magnificent oral poetry. They may not have a written language. They didn't then, but they had an oral tradition that was absolutely awe-inspiring. Those poems, though, those epic poems, were almost 100, I would say even 100% about men's experiences and wars and camels and leaders and all that guy stuff. But these women had a poetry of their own, and they shared that poetry around the water hole. And as the chief's wife and I were sitting there, I don't know why I did it. I still don't know why I did it, but I'm so glad I did. I stood up and I walked down to the water hole and I asked one of the women, I held out my hand asking for a piece of laundry. And she handed me this shawl, looked like a yellowish shawl. And I started washing along with them. And they all smiled, these glorious smiles. And then I started singing my own little song. This is the way we wash our clothes, wash our clothes, wash our clothes. This is the way we wash our clothes all on a Monday morning. I felt silly doing it, but it was the only washing song I could think of. The women smiled and laughed, and they started humming. Of course, they didn't know English. They had no idea what I was saying, but they were going, and they started washing their clothes in time with my washing my clothes. It was an absolutely awesome experience. I was one with the women at the waterhole. We didn't know each other's language. We knew nothing of each other's culture, and yet we were one. When you live in a country like Somalia that is harsh, that has droughts, that has famine, that has wars, that has disputes, the women learn to carry that strength with them. They reminded me of Grapes of Wrath. The older woman there, she had that power, that strength that held the family together. Somali women are like that. They have the strength within them to hold the country and the families together. Back where I was at the waterhole with the women, after that was over, Maryann and I wanted to go into the little village and see what it was like. And we had to do that before noon, because at noon they would close and they wouldn't reopen the rest of the day. So we hustled down there so we could see the little shops before noon. There were about 4 little shops lined up in a little row there in an open marketplace where other vendors had their wares. And there was one vendor who had a shop in particular who really, really, really wanted us to come in. We stopped. We could not believe our eyes. There in front of us, going from one side of the tiny little shop across 3 rows of shelves, was a huge red brassiere. This had to be at least a size 44 triple D. Now, how this little shop owner in the middle of nowhere came upon a huge red brassiere was absolutely beyond us. And all we could do was laugh, just laugh. The little shopkeeper served us some tea, as all shopkeepers do. He had his tea, and we bought a couple little tins of stuff. And then we walked out with tears just streaming down our face. We turned the corner to go back to Chief's compound, and we stopped again. There in front of us was a half circle of about 8 Rahawain warriors. These are the ones with the great big bushy woolly hairdos. They all had walking sticks that they carried. They were all had their wood pillows that they were carrying. They all had long swords that they were carrying. And we stopped. These did not look like friendly men. They were unlike anyone else we had seen in that village. Maryann, sadly, got terrified. And she started screaming and held out her purse and said, Here, take some. We do nothing. Take our money. And I held her back and I said, No, Maryann, no. Let us take 1 step back. Follow my lead on the count of 3. And 1, 2, 3. And we took 1 step back. This whole circle in unison took 1 step forward. My voice shaking by then, I said, Maryann, again, 1 more step back. We took 1 more step back. These warriors, in unison, pulled out their swords, their spears. And these are spears that have the poison tips on the end. And in unison, they took 1 step forward. I knew my time was ending. Maryann knew her time was ending. We had nowhere to go. The shop owner had closed his shop. Everyone else had vanished from the area. It was just those warriors and us. And I heard a rustle, a shh, something from behind. I thought, oh my God, there are more of them behind us. And something rushed past me. But it was the chief of the village, not another warrior. And he stood there with his arms out, protecting us. And he made a strong speech to those warriors, which I found out later told them that we were his friends, we were his guests, and they were not to harm us. No problem, they nodded, put their swords and spears back, and went on their way. When we got back to the chief's village, the chief's compound, I found out that these Rodwing warriors had literally never seen a white person before. They did not know what they were. But once in their own village, a woman had been unfaithful to her husband, and her husband had poured boiling hot water on her. Well, that splotched her skin white. Well, here we were, all white. So we must be the devil incarnate. But what else could they think? It was logical to them. We found out, too, that these warriors were in that village because the village had called them in to kill the lion that was lurking about. The lion had already killed 2 or 3 cows and was considered very dangerous. So they had called in help from other villages to bring in their warriors to kill that lion. And that's what the warriors were doing there. So they were all fired up and ready to kill. And then they saw these devil women. But I will say later in the day, as we were heading back, the torrential rains had started that afternoon, and our lorry got stuck. We just stuck in the mud. We could not move. Well, we saw these big hairdos bouncing out around on both sides of the lorry and in the bushes. Oh, no, not again. Please, not again. Well, our driver, who was Somali, called out to them and explained what the situation was. And they put their shoulders to the lorry and pushed us out. And they didn't walk away. They stayed with us for the next 4 hours. And every time we got stuck, they pushed us out of the mud. So we had the warriors in the morning who were ready literally to kill us, and the ones in the afternoons who saved us. Three or 4 months after we arrived in Baidoa, and we were living in Omar Chicago's compound, his wife gave birth to a baby girl. Now, she was sequestered for, I don't recall if it was 20 or 30 days, but for a certain number of days, all women are sequestered with their newborn child, which protects them from all of the diseases that are floating around. And this little baby girl was accepted into the family on, I'll say, the 30th day. On that day, Maryann and I were invited to the ceremony that was held in the yard outside our house. A goat had been roasting all day, and big piles of seasoned rice were ready. And there were probably 40 or 50 relatives there to help welcome this little baby girl into the world. It was just so meaningful. During the ceremony, Omar Chicago her name was Maryann, handed little Miriam to me. And I got to walk her around the group, and everybody gave her a blessing. And I blessed her too. And I thought, my goodness, what a beautiful, beautiful way to welcome a new person into your family. I didn't expect it with a little girl. Like you expect in a Muslim country, a boy would get all the celebration. But this was a little baby girl, and she was such a delight. We got to watch her grow her first couple of years while we were there. And she was always laughing and splashing in her water, and just a happy, wonderful little child. I felt so very, very honored that I got to carry her around. I didn't realize I had changed that much. But when I was in the airport back in LAX, I was looking around, back when the meeting people came into the terminal, and I was looking around for my mother and saw her, and I called out, "Hey, Mom, here I am." And she looked over, so I leaned down to pick up the one basket I had where all my worldly possessions were. And she started walking my way, and then she walked past me. She went to another young woman in back of me who was also a redhead, and I said, "Mom." She honestly did not recognize me. And she told me later it was more than my physical appearance, which had changed dramatically. I lost a lot of weight and got very tan. She said that there was a presence about me that wasn't there before. She said if I had not identified myself, she would not have known me. And that was a stark realization. And I took that little message and I pondered it for many years. How had I changed? What had I learned? And there were so many lessons that the Somalis taught me. I went there to save the world and to teach them. And I found out that they taught me. They changed me.
We're nearing the end of this episode, but not before Maryann gets the chance to meet our Aunt Deb.
I saw the movie Black Hawk Down. Why would we want to help people capable of doing that to us?
I think I would start telling her stories as you have asked, as many as she could handle. When you start learning about people of another culture, you learn the ways of another culture, the traditions of another culture, and even the parts that are not written anywhere else. You see the culture in a whole different light. Not only does it help that culture, but it helps us become better as a people and better as a country. If more people had been to Somalia as we were, there would never have been a Black Hawk Down incident. We would know the honor of these people. We would know how to approach them and to get what we needed, but not do it with harm. So yes, we need to reach out to them to secure the peace for them and the peace for us, so that we can all lead good lives.
I'm so grateful to Maryann for her stories and indomitable spirit. She truly needs her own podcast. Maryann Shank was the first person in her family to graduate from college, and shortly thereafter became a Peace Corps volunteer in Somalia, where she was a teacher. Back in California, she taught and worked as a librarian. Maryann has written a number of books, including The Mystical Land of Myrrh, about her time as a Peace Corps volunteer. She's written a volume of poetry, numerous articles, and a series of books to help women prosper in the business world. Her most recent book, Sorwana, My Beloved, was published in 2024. For more information, visit maryannshank.com. Thank you so much for listening. We appreciate it. If you haven't followed us already wherever you get your podcasts, please do so. Please leave a rating. It means a lot. And not only that, but it helps get those algorithms moving this show to the ears that need to hear it, or that we would like to hear it. You can find out much more by visiting our website at softpowerfulstories.org. There you can learn more about our guests, see pictures of them in action, find out the music that we use, and, of course, leave feedback. We would love to hear from you. Our show's logo was designed by Kate Furby, and my friend Kathy Zilski voices Dubious Aunt Deb, who, of course, she is nothing like, but she does it perfect. My name is Christopher Wurst. I'm the host and producer of Soft Powerful Stories. Until next time.